My previous Codex tutorial has already been viewed by over 1 million people, so today I'm bringing you all a much more comprehensive version, mainly because they've had a lot of feature updates. Even while making this video, the interface has already changed. This video will cover all the following sections, including how to use Codex on mobile, as well as automation, skills, and a very detailed complete walkthrough. This tutorial is suitable for the following types of people. First, if you have no coding or technical background, but want to use it to boost efficiency in your daily tasks. I don't have a coding background myself, but I can fully appreciate how much this AI helps us. Second, it's perfect for college students and white-collar professionals. Lastly, it's great for those who prefer a slower-paced video. Since I don't over-edit most of my videos, I've kept all the steps, hoping you can follow along with the tutorial's pace and complete it step by step. I believe Codex, including Claude Code, is the most important product right now and the most powerful one I've used. It really is. We're currently experiencing a shift from the era of AI chat to AI execution. I hope everyone can get on board with this transformation early to deeply experience it. So what exactly is Codex? Compared to typical AI chat tools, the biggest difference is that it can execute tasks autonomously. It can actually use your computer to perform various tasks. Traditional AI chat tells you how to do something, but it won't do it for you. But Codex can truly do the work for you. OpenAI founder Sam Altman also said on X that Codex right now feels like the ChatGPT moment of 2023. First, let's talk about how to use it. There are two ways. First, if you're already a ChatGPT Plus member or higher, log into ChatGPT, go to the left sidebar and click Codex. Once on this page, choose the middle version, or you can just Google search Codex, click through to the site and find the right version. Note that we want the desktop app, not the CLI or IDE. Currently, Codex supports both Mac and Windows. There are two ways to use it. First, if you're a ChatGPT Plus member or higher, just log into Codex with the same account and use your existing credits. The second way is via API. Think of it as pay as you go based on your needs. It doesn't limit how much you use. The more you use, the more you'll pay at the end of the month. It's just like a utility bill. If I blast the heat all winter, they won't cut my power mid-month, but I'll get a huge bill a month later. It's the same principle here. For most individual users, I still recommend the first method. I think it's simpler and the product experience is more complete. If you're an enterprise user with high volume, then the API route is for you. Alright, by entering through any of the methods above, we've officially arrived at the Codex page. Broadly speaking, the entire product interface is very similar to the ChatGPT we've used before. Let's break it down into 4 sections. The function section, the project and file section, the settings section, and the workspace section. If this is your first time using it, you'll likely see a blank page. That's normal because you haven't officially started yet. Okay, now let's talk about the first section. Within the function section, these are all core capabilities. For example, new chat starts a brand new conversation. Search lets you find past chats, previous folders, plugins. Here includes the plugins and skills themselves, which we'll expand on separately later. Automation is about letting Codex complete specific tasks for you automatically on a schedule. We can think of everything in this section as a primary entry point. The project section is made up of individual threads. This is a bit different from the AI tools we've used in the past. We need to understand two concepts. The first is project and the second is thread. Both are basic programming concepts. You can think of a project as a large folder, and underneath it are the individual conversations, which are the threads. The main purpose of projects and threads is to distinguish between different tasks. Let me give you an example. Say I want to create a website. We can open a new blank project and the name of this project will be website. We click save. Now, within a website project, what kind of content might we have? For instance, the first one might be a website page. It could also include backend data, or it could include users. So in this case, you can see how one large project contains different sub-projects. You can handle user-related content, backend data content, or page content in separate batches. This is where it differs from the chats we're used to. Now, some of you might ask, I don't have programming needs and I'm not technical, so what projects should I create? You can refer to my categories here. For example, I'll create a folder for my personal life, and then I'll use it specifically for life-related things. I can also set up a work folder to keep different content like tests or whatever. So just list folders based on your own needs. The core point is to understand that projects are for categorical management, helping you manage different goals. It can be seen as a personal knowledge base or as a personal project archive. There are two ways to create a project. The first is what I showed you earlier, where we click this plus sign in the project section on the left and select new blank project. Give it a name you're familiar with. For example, I'll use my own name here. Click save, and now you'll have a brand new folder. Then we can start a new conversation right inside this folder. The second way to create one is to click new chat in the top left. Then down here at the bottom, we can click on add new project. Then click new folder and give it any name. Now it automatically opens a project. Either way works in any project. You can save it as a pinned item. Just left click and then select pin conversation and you're all set. Then we open our pinned items and you can see what I've pinned here, like my daily expenses and the pinned thread we just saved earlier. Any pinned folders will also be displayed right here. If we collapse all of these, you can see a very clear structure. Main features plus pinned items, the frequently used parts, management of all project categories, and chats. Now what are chats? They're like temporary chat boxes. Some questions might be too random to justify creating a whole new project. In those cases, we use chat. Just click here in the chat section and ask away. This chat feature is much better for those miscellaneous questions, perfect for getting quick answers on the fly. Next, let's talk about settings. Click the settings button in the bottom left, then click settings. Now you'll see a long list of things you can adjust here, but we'll just pick a few key ones to cover. First, let's go to general, then work mode. There are two different work modes here. The first one is geared more towards technical users. In its responses, it will use more technical language and controls. The second is for everyday work. Personally, I think you can just turn on the coding mode. It's for programming. It won't negatively affect your user experience at all. And over time, it might even help you pick up some basic technical concepts. Of course, if you really don't want to see any technical jargon, you can just choose everyday work and the technical details will be reduced accordingly. Okay, now for permissions, I'll just enable all three of these by default. Next, let's look at dictation below. Dictation means that when you hold down a hotkey, you don't have to type to communicate. You can just speak to make changes. It really fits the whole vibe coding aesthetic. Right here, you can choose to change it. I've set mine to Command plus F. Once that's done, you'll see down here that it's already recording my voice. That's how it works. Now let's go to appearance on the left. Appearance is all about how you want your codex to look. You might think it's not that important, but I think it's a great way to personalize your workspace. For example, some people prefer light themes, while others might prefer a darker style like this. You can customize all of these adjustments right here, and there are many themes to choose from. Let me show you like this high contrast one that comes with Codex. There are even some yellowish ones that are very easy on the eyes. You can also choose something like Notion or maybe a slightly different style. You can adjust different colors here and even the font size. Both themes can be adjusted. Oh, and at the very bottom here, there's a pet mode. This pet is a desktop companion that comes built into Codex. We can click to open it and you'll see some default pets listed here. For instance, I'll pick Rocky, click wake up pet, and you see Rocky appears. Its purpose is, well, it's just really fun. And for example, after you interact with it, it'll pop up different messages on the side. And when you drag it around, you can see it has different animations, which is pretty cool. Plus, you can create your own pet. Click create, upload an image, and you can make your very own desktop pet. Now let's move on to personalization. In this section, personality defines the overall way Codex responds to you. I actually keep it set to friendly by default. I think its friendly mode is more direct than, say, ChatGPT, because it's a programming tool at its core. Of course, you can be even more direct and set it to pragmatic. Then its responses will be very firm and extremely straightforward. And here in custom instructions, you can provide some context. For example, if you want Codex to remember certain things across different projects. The reason I haven't written anything here is that I feel some custom instructions might affect the models accuracy and efficiency when communicating with you. So I usually just leave this part blank, because in the memory section below, I'll turn on enable memory. What is that? It means key information from different chat windows and threads will be remembered. So across different projects, it will also remember core key information. Compared to custom instructions, it's much more flexible. So you can just take a quick look at this. Keyboard shortcuts is also a feature that was just recently updated. You can check it out. I think the most useful ones are the first few, like archive chat, which is similar to deleting a chat or starting a new conversation. And this open side chat feature, I think it's quite useful. It lets you quickly open a temporary chat window, so you don't have to click around with your mouse to open a temporary one. I think this is much more convenient. As for the rest, it depends on your needs, so feel free to explore. Below that, like MCP and hook connections, many of these are related to programming technology, so we won't go into detail here. To wrap up, let's look at usage and billing. First, as we mentioned earlier, we previously discussed 2 ways to use Codex. Now, if you're using the account login method, it looks like this. With your current plan, you won't see this quota option, but if you're using the API, your remaining quota will be displayed here. One thing to note, if you're logged in, you should focus on the general usage quota. It's actually split into 2 tiers. The first tier is a 5-hour quota, and the second is a weekly quota. You can think of it as a way to prevent heavy usage in a short period. So a short-term threshold is set. Within 5 hours, if you use it excessively, your quota will drop to 0. At that point, Codex will tell you that you've reached your limit. Please come back at the next reset time, 1926. Then the quota resets to 100%. The weekly quota works the same way. If you use a lot of tokens within a week, it will also drop to 0. Then in a few days, it will reset that quota again. A small tip, when working on larger projects later, check your 5-hour quota. Make sure it's at least 50% to ensure it doesn't stop midway. Otherwise, you'll have to re-explain the context next time, which is a hassle and wastes tokens. Alright, now that we've covered the settings, let's head back to the Codex homepage. Let's look at how to operate the main workspace in the middle. First, we need to know which folder your work is based on. We've already discussed the folder concept, so in this middle section, let's click Enter Project Workspace first. Here you can see all the projects you created on the left. Let's use Website as an example and click it. Now your chat content here will be automatically grouped under Website. So you can select a specific project to perform specific tasks. Now let's take a look at this specific box. First, look at this plus sign. You can add photos and files there. Then there's plan mode. What is it? Well, when you're working on a project but aren't quite sure how to proceed, you can turn it on. Once enabled, for any question you ask, it will provide a plan and the steps involved rather than executing immediately. So it's better suited for the early stages of a project. If you just want it to quickly execute a task, you don't need it. Personally, I don't use this feature very often. Also, at the plus sign, you can pre-select plugins. We'll cover this later in the plugins section. Permissions means how much control you grant Codex over your computer. Here, I recommend choosing default permissions or full access permissions. Of course, more permissions mean higher risk. On the right, OpenAI, this is where we select the model. You can simply think of it, the higher the model's number, the more intelligent it is. You can see previous versions from GPT 5.2 to 5.3 and 5.4. For intelligence, I suggest just using medium, because if you don't have any technical project requirements, medium is actually quite sufficient. For speed, just use standard. If you choose ultra high, the corresponding quota consumed will also be higher. This little button is for dictation. After long pressing it, you speak here and it will appear. For example, I click, then I speak, and it will automatically convert everything I say into Chinese. After clicking finish, it will be displayed here. Once you click send, we'll enter a chat window. Let's click this small button in the top right corner. All the files produced in this chat window, like PowerPoints, Excels, or images, will all be displayed right here. The sources below, if it cites some online information, it will also place those sources here, which makes it very convenient for us to verify the authenticity of our information. Now this button in the top right is very important. Well, after clicking this button, there's a plus sign. You can open a browser directly within Codex. We can just open the browser and then we can enter a website. In Codex, you can access websites directly, which is incredibly powerful. Not only can it access websites, but Codex can also see your screen. Alright, having seen this, let's now review what we've covered so far. First, we entered Codex and we roughly divided it into several sections. Well, here are the functions, then the pinned projects and conversations, which store your previous projects and threads. Then in the settings, we talked about which settings need to be adjusted for the first use. Finally, we also discussed the overall functional layout within the workspace, including some newly added points. Now, before we move on to talk about plugins, let's do a small in-class assignment first, which can help students using it for the first time take that first step. Let's start by creating a new folder. You can use any method. For example, we can create a blank one here called small task. Okay, save. Then we click here to start a new conversation. In the workspace, we can see that this task corresponds to the small task folder. Let's have Codex help us check our computer's performance in advance. Now, before entering the question, let's check the permissions first. I've selected full access here. The model is set to 5.5 medium, which is fine, then enter. Alright, you can see that our task is now running, then you'll see it shows it's running. That's a very different point from the AI products we've used in the past. It's actually executing commands and checking your current computer, and it has already generated all this data. Once it's finished, we'll take a look at the dashboard style it created. You can follow along with me to complete this first in-class assignment. Now we can see these green and red numbers at the bottom. What do they mean? They represent the amount of code being added. The green part shows what's being added, while the red part shows what's being deleted. Since I previously asked it to create a performance dashboard, there wasn't anything that needed to be deleted. So you'll see these numbers constantly changing. Just keep an eye on that. Alright, I didn't even click anything, it just opened it up for me by default. So this is the performance dashboard we built in under a minute. You can see the results here. Can you feel the power of Codex? Okay, let's head back to Codex. The file is now saved right here. And finally, let's give it a name. Click rename in the top left corner, call it test computer performance, and save. Now we've fully completed this small introductory assignment. Okay, now that we've finished the assignment, we can officially move on to the plugin section. First, we're back on the Codex homepage, then click on plugins on the far left. This plugin page actually includes the skills page as well. Before we start, let's briefly clarify the difference between a plugin and a skill. Think of a plugin, for instance, as a method for Codex to connect with external products or services. Everything we see here, like Chrome, Hugging Face, or various email services, are third-party products, not made by OpenAI. By installing these plugins, we allow Codex to interact with these other products and work together. That's all it is. So what's a skill? You can think of a skill as a standard operating manual made up of a folder and several files. For example, if we're folding clothes, there are several steps involved, and we follow those same steps every single time. When you package all those steps together, it becomes a skill. A plugin can contain skills, but a skill doesn't contain plugins. That's how they relate. If you want to learn more about skills, check out my previous video on that topic. The entire plugin page is very similar to an app store. We have recommendations in different categories, like this one for coding. I'll recommend a few general purpose plugins that are great even if you don't have a technical background. First are the big three: Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. I'd suggest installing all of those. Then there are two I really want to highlight. One is computer use, which lets Codex directly control the apps on your computer. The second is Chrome, which allows you to browse directly within Codex so it can see what you're looking at. Both are very important. Since I usually deal with design and video production, I've also added things like Canva, hyperframes for video, and Remotion for motion graphics. These choices will vary from person to person, but since most of the plugin market is still dominated by the overseas ecosystem, you should check it out for yourself. If you use Notion, you can also add that. Then if we click on any plugin, we'll be taken to its details page. This middle section here explains exactly what the plugin can do. And under the include section is made up of different skills. As we mentioned before, a single plugin might contain several different skills. Once you're sure you want to install the plugin, click add to Codex in the top right corner. Alright, then click install at the bottom. Now let's go back to the plugins page together and test out the computer use plugin. First, please make sure that you have the computer use plugin installed. Next, let's try out how to use this particular plugin. We'll head back to our home page and continue from there. Okay, Under the small tasks folder, let's create a new one and call it plugins. Now, there are currently two ways to use a plugin. The first is by clicking the plus sign here and you'll see the plugins button. This shows all the plugins you've downloaded. Just click the one you need. Let's click computer. Now the second way is to go into the plugin itself and open it from there. Either way works, but I recommend using the plus sign as it's more flexible. Okay, let's click the plus sign. First, select the computer plugin from the available options. Now, at this point, I'll ask the plugin to play a song, specifically something that will help me focus and work quietly in the background without any distractions. Before we move forward, let's take a moment to check the access permissions and also confirm which model is currently being used. Alright, it looks like everything is set up correctly and the file is in the right folder, so let's go ahead and click send. Now we can clearly see that it is using its computer control capability to carefully find the right product and the correct file. And then, after that, it is looking through the music. So without me doing anything at all, my computer has already performed this action for me. This is just one example. You can imagine how powerful the things it can do will be. One more suggestion, you can just ask it directly, help me see what scenarios, and then click send. Then it will tell you what it's capable of. It really opens up your imagination. Alright, now that we've looked at plugins, let's move on to skills. As I explained before what skills are, personally I think skills are a bit overrated. There are many skills, but they're not actually that useful. I don't really get why the market keeps pushing these skills, especially for those without a coding or technical background. So let's find one here and use it as an example. Take image gen for instance. As you know, Codex can't generate images by default. So in this case, we need to use this skill. Now this image gen directly utilizes OpenAI's GPT image 2.0. Right, so we've already installed it. The installation process is quite simple. We just need to click to open it and then click install. Using skills is different from using plugins. We select plugins over here, but for skills, you actually need to type in this $sign, yes, the $sign right here. Once you type the $sign, it will call up all the available skills and then they will appear, okay? Then we find the corresponding image gen. So when you're typing text, for example, you've typed a lot and suddenly feel like, hey, I want to use it to create an image. Well, right here, we just type a few characters, the $sign, and then we click on the image gen, and that's it. Since I've already tested this, let me show you the same explanation. Help me make a comic to describe Codex skills and output it in Chinese. So this is a test I did earlier. Then it will utilize the image model's capabilities. Let's take a look at the result together. Well, all the Chinese text is spot on, even if some small details are, well, a bit blurry. Now let's go back to the plugin section. All plugins and skills can actually be managed. We click on manage in the top right and you'll be able to see all the plugins, apps, MCPs and skills on this Codex instance. If there's something you don't need, we can just turn it off. For example, I'll click on this skill and then down here in this area we can disable it. So now this skill is disabled. Okay, now that we've covered plugins and skills, let's talk about automation. On the Codex desktop, we click this automation button on the left. Clicking it, you'll notice the automation button is actually shaped like an alarm clock. Automation means completing tasks on a schedule, which is perfect for highly repetitive work content. For instance, since there's so much AI information nowadays, as a blogger, I need to see the most critical updates. With so much info, wouldn't it be helpful if core updates were pushed to me daily? So this is a feature that's very well suited for automation because it has a specific task, which is to get key information. Secondly, it has a scheduled trigger time, which is every day. We click on this new automation feature and you'll find it's just a simple block that includes a title. Now this title is for your own reference, for example, AI trend news. And then down here, you need to clearly and specifically tell it exactly what you want to do. Then at the bottom between worktree and local, it usually defaults to worktree by default. The difference between Worktree and local is that local actually uses your local folders on your computer to make changes directly. As for Worktree, it's more like a separate instance. It won't affect your main task, so you can choose either of these two. Selecting a project is the same. We talked about these different folders before. So whichever project or folder you want this to run in automatically, just put it there. For instance, if this automation is related to my life, I'll click on life. Once that's done, it will start running repeatedly in that folder. Next, let's look at the time settings. You can set it to run daily, every weekday, hourly, or even choose a custom schedule. Yes, all of these options are fully configurable. Set the time that works best for you. After that, you can select the model you want to use for inference. But the hardest part is actually how to write the prompt. Let's close this for now and take a look at my AI trend prompt. As you can see, it's a very long and complex thing, and within this, you can write it very simply in the automation. But the simpler you write it, the more vague the execution will be. The more detailed it is, the better the results. Now, did I write this long prompt myself? Not really. I used Codex to help me. We just need to open a new chat and then tell it exactly what you want. For example, right now I want to create an automation, specifically a keyword automation. So what I want to do is I want to